The affordable housing secret that America will never use. What if rent never ate more than 25% of your income, ever? Not in a lucky year, not with a roommate, always. Today, the typical US renter hands over around 40% of pre-tax income just to keep a roof, and in high-cost metros it's worse. Here's what actually happens in a place that solved this. Vienna uses cost-rent social housing, mixed income allocation, and long-term tenures to keep rents predictable and lives stable. Most people think America can copy-paste that, but the US economy runs on rising home values as a wealth engine and collateral base. It'll show how Vienna works, who blocks it here, and the one lever that would blow up US politics if pulled, plus how a credible fix could actually make your life calmer this year. The crisis we pretend is normal. Okay, so here's the thing. If housing felt harder every year, it's not your imagination. Wages moved like a slow train, housing took the express. Over the last 2 decades, home price-to-income ratios in major US metros pushed beyond 6, 8, even double digits. Rents followed. Nationally, renter households now spend a share of income on shelter that would have been alarming a generation ago. Nearly half of renters are cost-burdened, over 30% of income, and a growing slice are severely burdened, crossing 50%. Most people think this is just a coastal story. It isn't. Sun Belt markets that once promised affordability saw prices leap after 2020. Institutional buyers and remote work bidders layered onto tight inventories, and suddenly, starter home was more museum piece than market segment. Builders chased higher margin product because the math forced them there. Entry-level formats, small lots, duplexes, courtyard apartments, got zoned out decades ago, so even when demand screams for them, permits say no. Now homelessness, you'd expect record construction spending to ease it. Instead, we got a perverse pairing. Rising construction costs, rising rents, rising homelessness. When the bottom of the market collapses, every shock, job loss, medical bill knocks more people out. Emergency rooms, police responses, and shelters backfill what stable housing would have prevented. That's not a moral lecture. It's a budgeting fact cities quietly admit while cutting checks. Here's where it gets interesting. The standard explanation says, it's just supply. Build more and prices fall. Supply matters. But when zoning locks capacity, financing demands high returns, and big capital treats homes like a yield product, adding a few thousand units into a million-unit shortage barely moves price. After 2008, firms like Invitation Homes and American Homes for Rent assembled single-family portfolios at scale. Cheap capital and software gave them regional pricing power. Build-to-rent subdivisions grew because spread and speed pencil better when you can standardize, fee stack, and refinance against rising values. Everything changes when you meet the couple who did everything right. 2 incomes, good credit, pre-approved. They toured for months, waived contingencies, wrote letters to sellers. They still lost to an all-cash bid, sometimes from an LLC that planned light rehab and a quick rent-up. That's not a villain story, it's incentives. Time kills deals, so speed wins, cash wins. And when a region's comps rise, appraisals validate the next jump. Now the macro picture. Mortgage rates whipsawed, but prices didn't crater because supply elasticity is low. Years of minimum lot sizes, parking mandates, height caps, and discretionary approvals baked scarcity into the code. Permit timelines stretch into seasons, sometimes years. If you're a developer facing legal risk, interest carry, and design revisions, you move up market to survive. That's why luxury seems to sprout everywhere. The margin is a hedge against 1,000 paper cuts. But here's the real secret. We've normalized a system where housing must both be affordable and make owners rich. Most households' net worth lives in their home. That means any policy perceived to flatten prices looks like an attack on retirement. Local governments depend on property assessments to fund schools and services, so they're nervous too. Banks' collateral models and mortgage-backed securities, pricing assumes stable to rising values. Every layer pushes towards scarcity and appreciation, not broad access. You probably think, so we're stuck. Not entirely. There's a place that chose different incentives a century ago and never let go. Vienna treated housing like a public utility, nice, dignified, built to last, rather than a speculative ladder. They didn't try to outbid the market every year. They built outside it at scale with permanent rules that make rent a cost, not a casino chip. Before we jump there, let's close one loop. The US did build lots, but we built in formats and locations that lock in car dependency, long commutes, and high operating costs for households. We fragmented approvals so every project is a mini election. We tied school quality to assessed values, then told families to buy into opportunity. We allowed a meeting at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday to delay 1,000 homes for a year, then wondered why rents rose. Now this is important because once you understand the constraints, the Vienna story stops sounding like a fairy tale and starts sounding like an operating system choice. They picked cost rent over asset inflation. They funded maintenance so buildings don't decay between grants. They mixed income so there's no stigma, and they kept tenures long so communities could actually form. One last micro story. A renter hits a rent hike they can't absorb. They move 25 miles out, then 40. Commute hours balloon, childcare cracks, job performance slips. The landlord wasn't evil, the spreadsheet was. That's our system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Reward scarcity, push costs onto households, and call it the market. There's another way. Vienna proved it a century ago. Let me show you how they built it, and why, in America, the very institutions that hold our wealth would fight it. Read Vienna, how a city made housing a public utility. To see the alternative, jump to Vienna right after World War I. The city was overcrowded, unhealthy, and politically ready to try something bold. In 1919, the Social Democrats won a mandate and used it to treat housing like water or electricity, a public utility that delivers stability, not a casino chip for speculation. That period is nicknamed Red Vienna, not because everything was nationalized, but because the city set rules that aligned private effort with public goals over decades, not quarters. Here's what actually happens when a city commits like that. First, they declared a municipal housing mandate: quality, permanence, dignity. No barracks, no temporary huts. They built courtyard blocks and human-scale streets that invited daily life into shared spaces. The most famous symbol is Karl Marx Hof, a kilometer-long complex completed in 1930 with generous courtyards, arches, and light. It wasn't an architectural flex for the elite. It was a signal that working families deserved lasting buildings with beauty baked in. If you're going to live somewhere for decades, the walls shouldn't apologize for existing. But design without social policy doesn't change outcomes, so they rewired who got to live there. Most people think public housing means deep poverty concentrations. Vienna refused that trap. They aimed for mixed income allocation from the start, broad eligibility bands, not just the very bottom. That does two things. It sidesteps stigma: you're not in the projects. You're in a normal building with neighbors across incomes. And it stabilizes the rent roll so maintenance and services are funded consistently. When your tenant base looks like your city, management stops lurching between crisis and neglect. Amenities weren't an afterthought, they were the point. Many complexes included kindergartens, laundries, clinics, and libraries on site. That integrated services play mattered because housing costs aren't just rent. Childcare, transit time, and basic errands eat budgets too. By embedding everyday needs into the block and connecting neighborhoods to reliable tram and rail lines, Vienna lowered the total cost of living. You can afford more of life when you don't have to own 2 cars or cross town for a doctor. Now let's talk money, because ideals don't pour concrete. Vienna built a funding engine that didn't depend on booms. The city levied dedicated housing taxes, progressive, visible, and earmarked, on things like luxury residences, car ownership, and household servants. That revenue didn't vanish into a general fund. It flowed directly into construction and maintenance. They also assembled and banked land. When the city owns sites, it doesn't have to outbid speculators every cycle, and it can set ground leases that keep long-term control. That land strategy is boring on purpose. It's how you break the buy high, sell higher loop that wrecks affordability. Who builds and manages the housing matters too. Vienna leaned on municipal companies and limited profit developers that are legally constrained. These entities operate under cost-rent principles. Rents reflect what it costs to build and maintain over time, not what a frenzied market will pay this summer. Surpluses are reinvested into upkeep and new projects, not skimmed as windfall profits. The result is a portfolio that doesn't decay waiting for grants because depreciation is planned from day one. Roofs get replaced when they need to, elevators get modernized, and courtyards stay clean. You're not patching a crisis, you're running a utility. Tenure is the quiet superpower. When leases aren't a revolving door and eviction isn't an investment strategy, people form roots. Kids can attend the same school longer. Elderly residents stay near services and neighbors who know them. Turnover costs drop, which feeds back into stable operating budgets. And because there's no equity jackpot from flipping, there's no incentive to churn tenants or play vacancy games. Stability becomes the default, not a luxury. Quality architecture wasn't charity, it was policy. The city commissioned respected architects, set standards for light, ventilation, and shared space, and repeated winning patterns. You can walk block after block and see courtyards that invite children to play, stairwells that feel safe, and facades that age gracefully. When buildings are nice, mixed income is politically sustainable. People defend places they're proud of. Now you might be thinking, that's a different century, different politics. Fair, but notice the mechanics. Dedicated revenue beats program-by-program appropriations. Public land breaks bidding wars. Limited profit rules keep rents tethered to costs. Mixed income allocation avoids stigma and fiscal fragility. And integrated amenities reduce the hidden costs that blow up household budgets. This isn't nostalgia, it's a system design that still runs. Everything changes when you recognize the contrast with US assumptions. We built for exit, refinance, sell, syndicate, so pro formas rely on appreciation. Vienna built for permanence, hold, maintain, reinvest, so pro formas rely on predictable operating cash and patient capital. We let zoning carve cities into exclusionary enclaves, then fought each building one at a time. Vienna standardized formats and approvals, then scaled. One last point before we cross back over the Atlantic. Vienna's model survived recessions and political swings because it aligned with everyday self-interest. Secure rents, decent buildings, and services nearby. When a middle-class family can live comfortably without mortgaging their future, they don't clamor to dismantle the system. That political insulation is part of the design. It's hard to campaign against the courtyard where your kid learned to ride a bike. So yes, Vienna treated housing like a utility. They chose cost over speculation, permanence over churn, and dignity over triage. That's the blueprint. The challenge comes when you try to plug that blueprint into America's operating system, where home values are the retirement plan, the school funding base, and the banking sector's collateral, all at once. The money engine, taxes, land, and permanent nonprofit ownership. Let's open the hood on Vienna's housing engine, because the secret isn't charity. It's cash flow, ownership, and rules that don't leak value. 3 pillars make it work: dedicated taxes, public land, and builders who can't privatize the upside. Start with taxes. Vienna didn't wait for housing money to appear in a budget fight. They created it. The city levied progressive, earmarked revenues, a housing construction tax paid by residents and employers, plus luxury surcharges on things like large apartments, multiple car ownership, and domestic servants back in the day. The point wasn't punishment, it was alignment. If you enjoyed higher-end consumption, a slice funded the common platform: stable, well-built homes. Critically, this revenue was dedicated. It didn't disappear into a general fund or swing with political seasons. Earmarking insulated the pipeline so architects, contractors, and maintenance crews could count on multi-year cash, not one-off grants. Now land, anyone who's ever pro formed a project knows site cost can blow affordability before you even sharpen a pencil. Vienna's answer was to bank land in good times and bad. The city assembled sites, held them, and leased them long-term on public interest terms. When you control the dirt, you control the deal. You can pick the builder, set design standards, and lock affordability without paying speculative premiums. And because the ground lease extends over decades, the city retains stewardship. That prevents the classic US pattern where a subsidized project hits year 15, exits restrictions, and affordability walks out the door. Land and taxes don't pour concrete by themselves. You need builders whose incentives don't drift toward flipping. Vienna relies on municipal companies and limited profit housing associations. Limited profit isn't a vibe, it's a legal status. These entities operate under a cost-rent regime. Rents are pegged to actual development and operating costs, plus a modest, regulated return to keep the lights on and fund reserves. They can't privatize surpluses, they recycle them into upkeep and new construction. That's the operational heart of permanence. When the boiler fails in year 27, there's a sinking fund, not a pleading letter to a legislature. Here's what actually happens when you run housing like this. Instead of underwriting to exit, RIFI assumptions, cap rate compression, condo sellout, you underwrite to hold. You plan depreciation in the budget. You schedule facade rehab and elevator modernization. You set aside for playground updates and energy retrofits. The rent roll stabilizes because tenant churn is low and mixed income allocation balances cash flows. And because you're not extracting value to pay distant investors, your cost base is lower over the asset's life. The governance matters too. Vienna doesn't pretend that nonprofits are automatically saints. They regulate them. Limited profit associations face audits, transparency requirements, and caps on executive pay tied to portfolio size. Tenants have representation in building councils that review maintenance, house rules, and budgets. That feedback loop keeps service quality high and prevents the quiet decay that haunts underfunded public housing elsewhere. When residents can flag problems early and managers have the budget to fix them, small issues don't become capital crises. Design and procurement support the math. The city uses pattern books and standardized components where it makes sense, repeating proven building types that hit daylight standards, courtyard proportions, and acoustics. Standardization doesn't mean monotony. It means predictable costs and fewer change orders. That predictability lets limited profit developers commit to tighter rent targets without praying for a miracle on bids. You might be thinking, what about new supply pressure? Don't these rules slow things down? Actually, the opposite. Because sites are pre-assembled, approvals follow clear criteria, and the financing pipeline is permanent, cycle time is faster than fighting every project through discretionary hearings. When a city knows it can place, say, 3,000 units a year at cost rent, it can coordinate trades, apprenticeships, and factory-built elements to de-risk timelines. And because the land is public, you can embed non-revenue uses, childcare rooms, clinics, community kitchens, without wrecking the pro forma. Let's talk numbers in human terms. A cost rent unit might launch at a rent 20–40% below a comparable market rate new build, not because someone waved a wand, but because three inputs collapsed: no land speculation, non-extractive financing, and zero fee stacking. You're not hiding junk fees in amenities. You're not funding a developer profit that depends on a 5% annual price climb. You're paying for masonry, elevators, care workers, and a maintenance crew that knows the building. Everything changes when you compare this to the US default. Our construction finance assumes appreciation. Banks underwrite to stabilize value that rises. Equity expects an exit. Debt funds an REIT's price for yield growth. That's why so many projects only pencil at the top of the market, and why affordable deals require layers of tax credits, soft loans, and timing gymnastics. Vienna simplified the stack by changing the owner's goals. No exit, no flip, no harvest event, just durable operating cash and reinvestment. There's a cultural piece here, but it's enforced by contracts, not vibes. Ground leases lock purpose. Limited profit charters lock use of surplus. Dedicated taxes lock funding. Tenant councils lock accountability. Put those together and you get a flywheel. Predictable revenue supports good maintenance. Good maintenance supports political support. Political support protects the taxes and land bank. The land bank keeps costs low. Low costs keep rents stable. That's the money engine. It's boring, deliberate, and extremely hard to dislodge once people rely on it. And it's exactly the kind of engine America resists, because our housing finance is designed to reward appreciation, not permanence. America's religion: your home must make you rich. Let's talk about the American operating system, because this is where Vienna crashes. In the US, your home isn't just shelter, it's your balance sheet. For the typical household, home equity is the primary store of wealth. That's why the median homeowner's net worth is many multiples of the median renter's, because we've wired tax, credit, and politics to make it so. Here's what actually happens inside that wiring. After World War II, the federal government built a homeownership escalator. FHA insurance standardized long-term, fixed-rate mortgages. The GI Bill put veterans into houses at scale. The mortgage interest deduction let higher earners deduct interest, effectively subsidizing larger loans and bidding up prices. Property tax deductions stacked on top. Most people think these are neutral benefits. They aren't. They tilt demand toward owning, leverage, and appreciation. Now layer in the cultural payoff. Buy early, ride the appreciation, retire on the equity. That narrative worked when starter homes were accessible and wages kept up. But when zoning wiped out small formats and land use rules locked in scarcity, the on-ramp broke. First-time buyers faced down payments chased by rising comps, while existing owners watch Zillow and smile. The system creates insiders and outsiders by design. Politically, that insider group dominates. Homeowners vote at higher rates than renters. They're older, more stable, and deeply tied to neighborhood outcomes. Any policy that flattens home price growth reads like a raid on their retirement plan. Tell a homeowner in a high-cost district that you plan to expand gentle density, stabilize rents, and cool appreciation, and they hear. Your property taxes won't fall, but your paper gains might. That's not an easy sell at a town hall or in a campaign. Everything changes when you add schools. Local services lean on property taxes, and school boundaries map to home values. Families buy into districts with higher test scores, and those scores reinforce prices. Appraisals depend on comparables, so existing high values justify the next one. If you flatten prices, local budgets worry about assessments. If you let prices run, inequity worsens. The feedback loop rewards scarcity and sameness. Finance doubles down on this bias. Mortgage underwriting, GSE guidelines, and appraisal standards love standardization and predictable comps. Banks hold loans or securitize them into MBS priced on assumptions of stable to rising values and low default correlations. House prices are collateral for the household sector, and by extension, a pillar in the broader credit system. A policy that signals we intend to curb appreciation doesn't just touch homeowners, it touches bond desks. Now this is important because it explains the reflexive pushback to Vienna-style cost trend. A permanent, large-scale, below-market stock reduces rent pressure and over time cools private market appreciation. That's the point. But in America, it triggers three immediate counterforces. First, incumbent homeowners mobilize, formally through HOAs and informally through local politics, to protect neighborhood character, which functions as a price protection proxy. Second, lenders and real estate interests warn about impacts on collateral values and local revenues. Third, policymakers eye the donor class, developers, brokers, and asset managers, who benefit from scarcity-driven returns. Most people think this is just NIMBY emotion. It's not just that. It's a rational defense of an asset regime we built. The mortgage interest deduction alone funnels billions annually, with the largest benefits accruing to higher-income owners. 1031 exchanges and capital gains exclusions on home sales sweeten the pot. Zoning enforces the supply side. Together, they create a religion. Your home must make you rich. Here's a micro-story that captures the psychology. A couple bought in 2013, stretched to get in, renovated the kitchen, and watched values climb. That equity isn't abstract. It's the college plan, the emergency fund, the buffer against layoffs. Propose a social housing push big enough to cool the local market, and they hear risk. They're not greedy. They're protecting the only cushion they have. That's why the politics are so hard. Once you understand that, you see why small reforms stall. Legalizing ADUs helps at the margins, but when accessory units start shifting comps or parking patterns, backlash rises. Upzoning near transit unlocks production, but the most valuable parcels are ringed with homeowners who vote, donate, and sue. Even renter-friendly cities run into the same wall. The tax base and bond ratings lean on assessed values. Flatten appreciation, and you invite budget fights. So what would it take to change the religion? You'd need a credible alternative wealth path for the middle class that doesn't depend on housing inflation. You'd need school funding that decouples from local assessments. You'd need mortgage and appraisal standards that don't punish diversity in housing types. And you'd need a visible, durable public housing provider that convinces even owners that stable rents are good for the local economy. That's a long list, which is why the default is drift. The real secret is this: America treats housing as both a consumption good and the nation's savings account. When push comes to shove, we defend the savings account. That's the obstacle Vienna never had to clear at this scale. And it's why the next lever, zoning, is where beliefs turn into law. Zoning, the legal machine that manufactures scarcity. Now we turn belief into law. Zoning is where America's wealth religion got a legal toolkit. Early 20th century planners said they were separating incompatible uses. In practice, single-family zoning emerged as a filter for class and race. When explicit racial covenants were struck down, minimum lot sizes, bans on multifamily, and strict setbacks did the same job with cleaner language. Most people think zoning protects quiet streets. It also hard caps how many households can access high-opportunity land. Here's what actually happens when you bake scarcity into the code. Minimum lot sizes, say 7,500 or 10,000 square feet, erase the small lot starter homes that used to be common. Height caps lock you at 2 or 3 stories, even a block from jobs. Parking mandates, 2 spaces per unit, often on site, consume land and cash so small apartments don't pencil. If you can't add units, price must carry the load. That's not a bug, it's the mechanism. Density bans near transit might be the most expensive choice we ever made. We built rail and frequent buses, then walled off the parcels next to them. So a handful of homeowners enjoy short commutes while the region shoulders congestion and long drives. Vehicle miles traveled climb, emissions rise, and local businesses lose because foot traffic is thin. Everything looks stable from the cul-de-sac, but systems-level costs explode. The process layer makes it worse. In many cities, approvals are discretionary. That means even a code-compliant project can be hauled into hearings, revised, or appealed. Environmental review tools modeled on CQA can be used in good faith, but they're also a delay lever. Time kills financing. Interest carry adds up, bids go stale, and the pro forma breaks. Developers who survive learn a simple lesson: aim upscale to absorb risk. That's how you end up with luxury as the default, because mid-market product can't take the punches. You might be thinking, but we do approve projects eventually. Right, but elasticity is what matters. If every 1% demand shock takes years to meet with supply, prices spike. New supply arrives at the top of the market because it's the only place margins can cover the maze of consultants, redesigns, and litigation risk. Filtering new becomes old becomes affordable, works on decades-long timelines, not during a crisis. Meanwhile, renters move farther out, commutes lengthen, and employers struggle to hire. Setbacks and form rules add another quiet choke point. Deep front yards and side yard requirements spread buildings apart, which feels nice until you multiply it across a metro. You get sprawl by law, longer pipes, wider roads, more school buses, and larger fire service areas. Local budgets absorb maintenance obligations forever, so the tax base must rise to keep up. Higher assessments become a necessity, not a choice, which feeds the political defense of high property values. Scarcity finances the infrastructure you built to serve sparse development. That's the loop. Let's talk small formats, because that's where affordability used to live. Duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, courtyard apartments above shops. These missing middle types vanished because they became illegal on most residential land. Even when states like Oregon re-legalized them, local design standards can quietly strangle viability. Height triggers, unit size minimums, or facade articulation rules that treat a fourplex like a mini high-rise. Each add-on sounds reasonable. Together, they're fatal to small builders. The discretionary veto empowers a very specific set of voices. Hearings happen weeknights. Retirees, homeowners with flexible schedules, and organized neighborhood groups show up. Renters juggling shifts and childcare don't. So neighborhood character becomes a catch-all to oppose height, reduce units, or add parking. The stated concerns, traffic, shadows, views mask the core goal. Keep demand chasing a capped supply. If you defend price, you defend wealth. The law takes care of the rest. Now this is important because it explains why a Vienna-style cost-rent sector is politically radioactive in many jurisdictions. If you allow large amounts of permanently affordable units near jobs and transit, you cool nearby rents and over time prices. Zoning has been the shield against that outcome. Even reforms that pass on paper get buried in process. Historic overlays expand, design review councils gain teeth, or infrastructure concurrency rules create new hurdles. It's whack-a-mole with legal code. Everything changes when states preempt. Oregon legalized missing middle statewide in many cities. California opened the floodgates for ADUs and upsend near transit with measures like SB 9 and TOD overlays. Production rose where approvals became by right. No hearings, no appeals if you meet the rules. That's the lesson. If you want supply, you need clear, fast, predictable pathways. But even these reforms run into capacity limits without land assembly, public developers, and dedicated funding. Zoning can stop harm. It can't build housing by itself. Here's a quick micro story. A small builder wants to convert a single bungalow lot into 4 modest condos. The code says it's permitted. Neighbors appeal on parking and scale. The city requires a traffic study, arborist report, redesigns for roof lines, and an underground garage to preserve street parking. 18 months later, interest rates are up, bids are higher, and the lender tightens terms. The builder pivots to 2 luxury units. The neighborhood wins and affordability loses. So when you hear just build, remember the law decides whether building is a verb or a mirage. The legal machine manufactures scarcity, then we act surprised when prices rise. And that machine is staffed by voters whose wealth rides on the outcome. Next, we'll look at how that neighborhood veto professionalized, how meetings, lawsuits, and procedural weapons turned into a playbook that can stop a billion-dollar project with a weeknight quorum. NIMBY, the neighborhood veto, weaponized. Here's where it gets practical. The neighborhood veto isn't a vibe, it's a procedure manual. A Tuesday night hearing at City Hall can swing a project's timeline by years, and in housing, time is money. Show up with 30 organized neighbors and you can add conditions, force redesigns, or kick the can to another meeting. Meanwhile, interest ticks, bids expire, and the spreadsheet starts bleeding. The playbook sounds reasonable on paper. Traffic, shadows, views, neighborhood character, parking spillover. Each objection asks for one more study, one more revision, one more concession. Individually, they look like stewardship. Together, they're a delay machine. Environmental review statutes modeled on CQA were built to catch real harms, but they double as a brake. File an appeal, claim inadequate analysis, and you've bought 6 months. File a lawsuit, and you've bought a year. Financing doesn't wait. Now this is important because process risk changes what gets built. Developers don't price only concrete and labor, they price uncertainty. If you expect a hearing gauntlet, you hedge with higher margin units that can absorb hits. Mid-market family apartments with normal finishes can't carry surprise underground parking or an extra stair core added at the 11th hour. Luxury can. So neighborhood character, complaints end up producing penthouses that feel out of character. The irony writes itself. Who shows up? Retirees, longtime owners, and HOA boards with email lists. They've got time, relationships with council members, and an asset to protect. Renters churn, parents juggle bedtime, and shift workers can't sit through 4 hours of testimony to get 2 minutes at a mic. That asymmetry is the real power. It turns low turnout hearings into billion-dollar policy. The procedural weapons are specific. Continued items push it to next month. Height stepbacks that shave units off top floors. Design review that treats a compliant box as out of context. Historic preservation overlays that balloon around anything older than you. Interim moratoriums that become semi-permanent. Off-site improvements that shift costs onto the project. Add a turn lane, plant street trees to a special standard, bury utility lines. Each line item sounds like good planning. Stack them and the pro forma snaps. Lawsuits are the nuclear option, but you don't need to win to do damage. File under environmental review. Argue the shade study didn't model winter sun angles or the traffic count missed Saturday farmers markets. Even if the city prevails, the developer burns a year, the lender gets nervous, and the contractor books a different job. Time kills deals more reliably than a vote. Everything changes when neighborhood groups learn to speak the language of law. They hire land use attorneys, traffic consultants, even PR firms. They submit comment letters that prefigure lawsuits. They trade templates across cities. A project in one district becomes case law for another. That's why you see the same phrases: precedent, piecemealing, cumulative impacts. It's coordinated, not chaotic. Developers adapt in ways the public can't see. They pre-negotiate with council offices. They budget for litigation and interest carry. They add contingency that becomes marble and gems because if you've already paid to fight, you might as well sell at the top. Smaller builders, the ones who used to produce backyard fourplexes and modest walk-ups, get squeezed out. The field consolidates to firms with legal departments and political consultants. There's a micro-story that sums this up. A 120-unit project near a bus corridor proposes 60 parking spaces, aiming to keep rents down. Neighbors say spillover will crush street parking. The commission mandates one stall per bedroom and an underground garage to mitigate. That adds millions in months. The lender requires higher pre-sales to cover the new cost. The developer rebrands as luxury transit-adjacent residences, with valet and pet spas to hit the numbers. The neighborhood won parking. It lost affordability. Now you might be thinking, isn't some oversight necessary? Sure, but discretion is the lever. Where approvals are by right, meet the code, get the permit, production rises and costs drop. Where approvals are discretionary, meet the code, then ask permission, process becomes a market of favors and vetoes. Vienna minimizes discretion. America swims in it. The coalition behind the veto isn't just neighbors. It's also preservationists wary of change, unions negotiating project labor terms, rival developers shaping competition, and sometimes well-meaning environmental groups guarding trees over tenants. Add local media that loves a David versus Goliath narrative, and you've got wind at the veto's back. The result is selection bias. Only projects with the fattest margins survive the gauntlet. That's why filtering will save us feels slow. You're filtering a tiny, expensive trickle, not a flood. And because each fight teaches the next developer to go bigger and richer, the baseline creeps upward. Here's the twist: while locals stall, big capital adapts. Institutions can float delays on a nationwide balance sheet. They can buy existing assets when new ones get stuck, tighten operations, and harvest yield. That's where we're headed next, because once housing became a financial product, Wall Street learned to read the neighborhood veto as a pricing signal, not a barrier. Wall Street moves in, homes become a yield product. While neighborhoods fought permits, institutions read the tea leaves and built a business model around scarcity. After the 2008 crash, tens of thousands of foreclosed houses hit the market at once. Most people think that inventory dribbled back to families. Instead, firms like Blackstone's Invitation Homes, American Homes for Rent, Progress Residential, and Trican Residential bought by the bundle. Courthouse auctions turned into spreadsheets. Bulk purchases turned into regional footprints. That was the birth of the institutional, single-family rental. Here's what actually happens when you run homes like a portfolio. Cheap capital and scale do the heavy lifting. Access to low-cost debt and securitization let these firms buy fast, renovate to a standardized spec, and then refinance against stabilized cash flows. Dynamic pricing software, think RealPage or in-house tools, tests rent sensitivity across thousands of units at once. If a submarket tolerates a $45 increase without spiking vacancy, the algorithm locks it in. That's not a landlord guessing. It's a system harvesting willingness to pay with better data than any mom-and-pop owner could ever assemble. Everything changes when you centralize operations. Call centers handle maintenance. Preferred vendors deliver volume discounts. Lease terms, deposit policies, late fees standardized. The result is predictable net operating income and cleaner collateral for lenders and bond buyers. Several players even securitize the rent streams, bundling them into single-family rental bonds. Once Wall Street can buy your cash flows, scale isn't just helpful, it's the point. Build-to-rent took the model further. Instead of hunting foreclosures, developers started delivering entire subdivisions designed from day one for renting. Uniform floor plans, shared amenities, centralized management. You've seen the pitch new homes without the mortgage, dog park, pool, fiber internet. For institutions, build-to-rent solves acquisition headaches and creates homogeneous assets that appraise cleanly. For tenants, it often beats aging stock on quality, at a price that quietly ratchets each renewal cycle, because the asset class is engineered to protect yield. Let's talk revenue beyond base rent. Fee stacking is the quiet profit center. Pet rent, smart lock add-ons, trash valet, amenity fees for the pool you never use, application and admin fees up front, lease break and convenience fees in the back. Each line is small, but across a portfolio, it's material. Maintenance becomes a cost center to squeeze, deferred where possible, outsourced to the cheapest vendor that meets SLA targets. Eviction policy calibrates risk, quick filings keep delinquency low, and even the threat disciplines payment behavior. From a spreadsheet's perspective, it's disciplined management. From a tenant's perspective, it's a maze of charges and hard edges. Public markets amplify these incentives. When a landlord is a REIT, quarterly earnings calls drive decisions. Shareholders reward NOI growth and same-home rent increases. Operating teams chase targets with renewal step-ups, even if wages in the region are flat. If a market softens, acquisition slows. If it tightens, purchase and rent hikes resume. The asset becomes a shock absorber for investors, not households. Now you might be thinking, is institutional ownership really that big? In many metros, it's still a minority of stock, but concentrated enough to matter. A few players with thousands of units in Phoenix, Atlanta, Tampa, or Charlotte can move asking rents at the margin. And they don't operate in a vacuum. Smaller landlords track the same comps. When the market leader lifts, others follow. There's a micro story that makes this real. A family in a build-to-rent community hits year 2. Base rent jumps $180 a month. Add a new technology package, fee, pet rent up $15, and lawn service moved from optional to mandatory. The email says market alignment. For the operator, that's a tidy increase with minimal vacancy risk because the comps moved too. For the family, the total monthly nut now competes with a mortgage they can't secure in a market that outpaced their savings. Institutions didn't just buy and build, they lobbied. Trade groups pushed back on rent control and tenant protections, arguing they dampen investment. They promoted professionalization of the industry, which often means state preemption of local rules that would cap fees or slow evictions. Meanwhile, private equity circled small multifamily, rolling up naturally occurring affordable housing and applying similar playbooks, cosmetic upgrades, amenity fees, and rent lifts justified as value add. Here's where Vienna's cost-rent model collides head-on. A large, permanent, below-market sector sets a reference price that undercuts fee-stacked, yield-optimized rents. It also reduces turnover, which starves the renewal bump that drives NOI. Appreciation cools when a city floods the zone with non-extractive units on public land. From Wall Street's vantage point, that's not just competition, it's a regime change. Of course, they fight it. But remember our earlier point, the neighborhood veto and the finance machine aren't enemies. They're complementary. Local scarcity props up rents, institutional owners monetize the scarcity, lenders securitize the cash, public markets ratify the results. Every layer rewards the same outcome. Fewer paths into ownership, more pressure on renters, and a tidy yield for investors insulated from the Tuesday night hearing. So when someone says, why not just be more like Vienna, understand who hears that as an existential threat. It's not just the homeowner at the microphone. It's also the fund manager on the earnings call, the bond buyer counting on rent-backed cash flows, and the bank valuing collateral. Cost rent doesn't break the spreadsheet because it's radical. It breaks it because it rewrites the inputs the spreadsheet depends on. Why Vienna works, design choices that kill segregation. Now, this is important because Vienna's money engine only pays off if the buildings and rules produce stable, mixed communities. They do that with a handful of design choices that look simple on paper and feel obvious when you walk them, but they're the opposite of how US cities operate. First, mixed income allocation. Most people think affordable housing means income cliffs and stigma. Vienna widens eligibility bands so teachers, nurses, retail workers, and lower-income households can all qualify. The application doesn't funnel only the poorest into one block, it distributes across developments and within them. That diversity stabilizes the rent roll and the politics. When your neighbor might be a lab tech or a bus driver, you don't get the othering that sinks support elsewhere. And because rents are set on cost-rent principles, not bidding wars, no one's windfall depends on squeezing out a lower-income family. Second, long-term tenures, security without speculation. Leases aren't traps, they're anchors. Residents know they can stay if they pay, and managers know turnover will be low. That predictability reduces vacancy loss and lets operators plan maintenance without the churn that destroys hallways and budgets. There's no upside to flipping a unit empty, and no bonus for forcing a renovation cycle just to hike the rent. You get communities that age together. Kids keep their friends. Elderly residents don't face a moving truck because a spreadsheet in another country changed a target. Third, human-scale blocks and courtyards. This sounds like aesthetics, but it's social engineering in the best sense. Mid-rise buildings wrapped around shared green space create natural surveillance, casual interaction, and safe play areas. Ground floors host common rooms or small services. Stairwells feel cared for because staff and tenants share custodial pride. When common areas are dignified, residents treat them well. You're not squeezing community space out to add one more microunit. You're budgeting for it because it lowers conflict and policing costs. Everything changes when you stop forcing car dependency. Vienna's transit-first planning means most developments sit on frequent tram or rail lines, with bus connections that actually show up. Parking isn't a mandate that bloats budgets, it's tailored to need. That single move drops household costs. Fewer cars, fewer repairs, no second car payment to reach a job. It also lets architects spend money on insulation, daylight, and durable materials, instead of underground garages that do nothing for daily life. When movement is cheap and easy, job options widen without forcing a move. Amenities are integrated by default, not resort-style fluff, useful stuff. On-site kindergartens that cut drop-off chaos. Clinics and senior services accessible by elevator, not a cross-down transfer. Laundry rooms that encourage neighborly overlap, reducing isolation. Small libraries or study rooms that support students without quiet space at home. These aren't afterthoughts, they're line items. When the building carries the tasks of daily life, the broader city carries less social service load. Governance keeps it honest. Tenant councils meet managers regularly. Budgets, maintenance plans, and house rules aren't mysteries, they're discussed. When a boiler needs replacing, residents hear the plan before they feel the cold. When noise or cleanliness slips, neighbors have a forum with power, not a suggestion box that feeds a void. Transparency builds trust, trust protects the model. That's how you sustain mixed-income tenures without drifting into us versus them. Now you might be thinking, want people game the system? Any system can be gamed. That's why Vienna uses transparent criteria, audits, and periodic eligibility checks that don't punish small income gains. The goal is social mix, not gatekeeping. If a household prospers, they aren't forced out midstream. The portfolio absorbs it because allocation balances across thousands of units and new applicants fill in at lower bands. The point is stability, not churn. Design standards do quiet, heavy lifting. Daylight requirements keep units healthy. Acoustic rules reduce neighbor conflict. Durable finishes save maintenance dollars. Pattern books speed approvals and protect quality control without freezing creativity. Architects compete on making human places within proven frames, not on squeezing maximum sellable square footage out of a lot. A quick micro story: a young family gets a cost-rent unit near a tram stop. Their rent doesn't jump every year. Childcare's downstairs. Grandparents are 3 stops away. Mom takes a better job across town because the commute is reliable. Dad starts evening classes in a study room off the courtyard. 2 years later, they're not richer because their home appreciated. They're richer because their time and stress declined. That's economic mobility, delivered through design. Here's the real secret. These choices kill segregation by making the dignified option the default for a broad middle, not a rescue lane for the poor. When mixed income feels normal, politics calm down. When tenure is stable, schools stabilize. When transit is good, opportunity expands without car debt. When governance is transparent, maintenance is proactive, not performative. Vienna didn't stumble into this. It's system design. Allocate broadly, anchor tenure, build human scale, plan for transit, integrate essentials, and share governance. Do that consistently and you don't need culture wars about projects. You need more courtyards and another tram. The American operating system rejects the patch. Everything we've covered so far runs into a hard wall. America's operating system. It's not one policy, it's a stack. Federal rules, state laws, local control, finance norms, and cultural defaults that all point the same direction. Try to graft Vienna's cost-rent model onto that stack, and the system spits it out. Start with federalism. Housing delivery lives in local hands. Cities and counties write zoning, run approvals, and hold hearings. States can preempt, but only if legislatures choose to. The federal government largely finances and insures mortgages, sprinkles tax credits, and sets fair housing baselines. It doesn't cite buildings. So any national shift has to thread a maze of veto points: city councils, planning commissions, design review boards, and ballot box initiatives. One mayor can champion social housing, the next can quietly stall it through staffing and process. Now layer property taxes. Most school districts and many local services depend on assessed values. That ties classroom budgets and fire trucks to home prices. Flatten appreciation, and city managers start sweating revenue projections and bond covenants. When finance directors brief councils, the message is subtle but clear. High values stabilize budgets. That alignment turns even neutral officials into defenders of scarcity. It's not ideology, it's a spreadsheet defending payroll. Appraisals and mortgage underwriting lock in sameness. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac buy loans that meet standardized criteria. Appraisers rely on comparable sales, which reward the last round of conformity and penalize new formats with few comps. Try placing mid-rise cost-rent housing in a low-rise district, and the comps won't justify the construction loan. Banks don't hate innovation, they hate unquantified risk. So they steer toward product that looks like last year's and sits on land already validated by prices. Sprawl isn't an accident, it's a risk control strategy. Construction finance expects an exit. Pro formas price debt against a stabilized value that grows. Equity wants IRR driven by sale, condo sellout, or cash-out refinance. Cost-rent flips that logic. No exit, long-hold reinvestment over harvest. U.S. lenders can fund it in theory, but the capital stack isn't built for patient, capped returns at scale without explicit public guarantees. When interest rates jump, market-rate projects stall, but so do public-private, affordable deals because layers of soft funding and tax credits rely on narrow windows. Vienna's engine hums through cycles because it doesn't need a bull market to pencil. Then there's stigma, mid-century public housing failures, tower-in-the-park isolation, deferred maintenance, racialized neglect left a political scar. Opponents of modern social housing point to those images as if Vienna's rules and governance match our worst examples. Even when new models propose mixed-income, high-quality, tenant-governed buildings, the word public triggers fear. That narrative is useful for anyone protecting the private yield machine. It keeps coalitions fractured and renters suspicious of anything that isn't a market voucher. Federal programs compound the tilt. The low-income housing tax credit is our primary production tool, but it's a syndication machine, not a public builder. LIHTC requires private investors, compliance periods, and complicated allocations. Properties can face rent resets at year 15 or 30 without preservation capital. Add project-based vouchers, home funds, and tax-exempt bonds, and you've built a Jenga tower that falls if any piece shifts. Compare that to a city with dedicated revenue, public land, and limited profit mandates, and you see why our projects are fragile and slow. Localism supercharges vetoes, even in states making progress. Oregon legalizing missing middle, California streamlining ADUs and transit-oriented projects. Cities retain procedural levers. Historic overlays expand. Objective design standards quietly become subjective checklists. Infrastructure concurrency rules demand off-site upgrades that nuke feasibility. State preemption can clear a path, but it can't conjure a land bank or a public developer with a pipeline. So reforms yield production where there's existing capacity and die where staff and sites are thin. Now this is important because it explains why Just Copy Vienna collapses on contact. Our tax code rewards leverage and owner wealth. Our school finance rewards high assessments. Our mortgage system rewards conformity. Our local approvals reward incumbents. Our primary affordable housing program rewards complexity. Put a cost-rent project into that ecosystem, and every interface point says no, or at least come back in a year. The banking system adds a quiet constraint. Mortgages and MBS markets rely on collateral values growing or at least holding. If policymakers announced a plan to materially cool appreciation across large metros, bond models would reprice. Haircuts on collateral rise, banks tight. You don't need a crash, just a credible expectation of slower growth to change credit terms. That's why flattening prices is treated like heresy. It vibrates through balance sheets way beyond city limits. A quick micro-story makes the OS visible. A state passes a law enabling social housing authorities. A city stands one up. They identify 3 sites, 2 privately held, 1 city-owned. The private sites appraise high, so land cost eats the savings from cost rent. The city site is clean, but the school district objects. A below-market project could cool nearby comps, which might slow assessment growth, which could hit their levy capacity. The Planning Commission asks for an environmental impact report despite by right status. The lender wants a takeout guarantee. The state fund cycle is annual and exhausted. By year 2, the team has 1 groundbreaking and 2 delays. No villain, just the OS doing its job. Everything changes when you recognize the fixes have to be systemic. You need state preemption to strip discretion, plus permanent revenue that bypasses annual budgets, plus land banking, plus public developers with standard designs, plus appraisal and underwriting updates that accept cost-rent valuations, plus school finance that isn't collateralized by neighborhood scarcity. Miss one piece and the OS roots around your patch. So could we build all that? Maybe, in a handful of states with the political will to preempt, fund, and professionalize. But until those pieces align, attempts to scale Vienna's model will keep stalling, not because the idea is bad, but because America's operating system is optimized for appreciation, conformity, and local control over who gets to live where. NIMBY versus social housing, more units, different worlds. Let's be fair and clear. Upzoning and faster approvals, classic NIMBY moves, do help. Where cities switch to by right approvals near transit, raise height limits, and cut parking mandates, supply responds. You can see it in parts of Seattle, Minneapolis, and post-ADU California. Elasticity improves when builders aren't dragged through hearings. But here's what actually happens. The first wave of new units lands at the top of the market, because that's what pencils after years of constraint. Filtering, the idea that today's new becomes tomorrow's affordable, works, but on a 15-30-year clock. Our crisis is on a 5-year clock. Now this is important because timelines decide winners and losers. If you're trying to keep a nurse in the city this year, waiting for filtering isn't a plan. And inclusionary zoning, requiring some affordable units in market projects, helps, but there's a trade-off. Push requirements too deep or too high and smaller projects stall. Developers either shrink scope, seek variances that take time, or walk. You end up with a paradox. A policy meant to add affordability can reduce total doors if it's misaligned with costs. Everything changes when you introduce public land and cost trend. A social housing builder with a long-term mandate can deliver immediate, permanent below-market units because 3 line items drop: no speculative land cost, non-extractive financing, and standardized designs. Instead of hoping the 27th floor of a luxury tower funds a few deed-restricted studios, you place a mid-rise on a city-owned parcel and price every unit on costs, not comps. Those units don't age into affordability, they start there and stay there. That's a different world. So is this an either-or? It shouldn't be. The hybrid path is the only one that scales on 2 timelines at once. States preempt exclusionary zoning to unlock by right production near jobs and transit. At the same time, they capitalize public developers or limited profit corporations with permanent revenue, think a dedicated housing fund, plus access to assembled public land. The market builds fast where it's good at building. The public sector fills the affordability gap with units that endure. Let me show you how the levers differ. Market upzoning is like laying more track. Trains can run faster, but only if operators see profit. Social housing is like running a public service on that track with guaranteed departures at a set price. One without the other leaves you stuck. Just upzone, and you get years of luxury while households drift. Just build social housing without opening the zoning valve, and you burn political capital fighting imports one site at a time. Pair them, and you absorb demand spikes without blowing up rents, while the permanent stock cools speculation's temperature. There's a micro story here. A state legalizes fourplexes on single-family lots in large cities. Production starts, but it's spotty because local standards still add cost. Meanwhile, a new public developer launches with a mandate to deliver 2,000 cost-rent units a year on state and city land near transit. In year 1, you see modest market infill and the first cost-rent projects. In year 3, hundreds of fourplexes have come online, and the public pipeline is reliably dropping mid-rise buildings with childcare and clinics on ground floors. Rents flatten because the reference price is no longer just the most recent luxury lease. It's also thousands of units priced on cost. Critics say social housing crowds out private builders, but most metros have a deficit measured in the hundreds of thousands of units. There's more than enough demand for both, and publicly led projects can de-risk private ones by delivering infrastructure, standardizing approvals, and signaling predictable timelines. When lenders trust the process, they price debt better. When small builders trust approvals, they show up. What about vouchers? They're a vital for deep poverty, but they chase rents in thin markets and lose power when landlords can pick higher-paying tenants. A voucher becomes strongest when it competes against a floor set by cost-rent stock. If a city offers decent, stable units at predictable prices, landlords can't extract monopoly rents as easily, and voucher holders are less exposed to renewal shocks. Now let's get honest about speed. Market-rate builders can ramp quickly if approvals are clean. Public developers start slower. They need to recruit teams, standardize designs, and stand up procurement, but they compound. Year 1 might be 500 units, year 3 2,000, year 5 5,000, because sites, pattern books, and contractors are lined up. Private supply rides the same wave because every by right rule applies to them too. The hybrid approach doesn't split the pie, it grows it, then reserves a permanent slice the market can't auction away. The real secret is aligning incentives. For NIMBY, the incentive is certainty, clear, objective rules, and fast permits. For social housing, the incentive is permanence, steady revenue, controlled land, and charters that lock surplus into reinvestment. When both run together, renters get immediate relief and a safety net that strengthens with time. Owners still see value in well-located homes, but without the whip of engineered scarcity. So yes, more units, but understand which machine you're powering. One bets on appreciation and time to filter. The other builds a floor that doesn't move. If you want cities where a teacher can live near a tram and not fear the renewal email, you need both tracks. Unlock production everywhere and fund permanence where it matters most. The 3 levers that could actually move the needle. Okay, so here's the thing. If you want Vienna-level outcomes in an American context, you need power that bites, money that doesn't vanish, and builders who aren't chasing exits. That's 3 levers: state preemption, permanent revenue, and professional public builders, plus 2 supports: land banking and tenant protections that don't strangle production. First, state preemption of exclusionary zoning near jobs and transit. We've seen proof. Oregon's HB 2001 ended exclusive single-family zoning in many cities, legalizing duplexes through fourplexes statewide. California treated ADUs like a civil right. SB 1069, OB 68, OB 881, and then layered SB 9 to allow lot splits in 2 units on most single-family parcels, plus transit-oriented density through SB 35 and other TOD measures where approvals are objective and by right. The pattern is clear when the state strips discretion and sets simple, objective standards. Height, setbacks, form permits go from maybe someday to yes if you comply. That flips the risk calculus for small and mid-sized builders who can't afford endless hearings. It also boxes out the neighborhood veto. You can still complain, but you can't kill a code-compliant project. Now, preemption is necessary, not sufficient. You still need money that's there in recessions and after elections. That means dedicated progressive housing revenue streams. Vienna had a housing construction tax and luxury levies. An American version could look like a statewide surcharge on high-value property transfers, a progressive real estate document tax, a pied-à-terre fee in hot metros, or a slice of capital gains on residential flips earmarked for a housing fund. The key is earmarking and durability. Don't dump it in the general fund to be rated. Wall it off with statutory protections so agencies can plan 5-year pipelines, not 12-month scrambles. Pair it with bond capacity backed by that dedicated stream, so the builder can front-load delivery and refinance against stable rents, not speculation. Third, public developers or limited-profit housing corporations with long-term mandates. Think of them as utilities for homes. They need charters that cap returns, lock surplus into reinvestment, and require cost-rent pricing. Give them a professional board, audited budgets, and transparent pipelines. Staff them with development pros, not just policy generalists. Equip them with pattern books, pre-approved mid-rise types that meet daylight, acoustic, and energy standards, so entitlement is fast and construction is repeatable. Let them partner with mission-driven nonprofits and union contractors on guaranteed volumes, so trades invest in apprenticeships and off-site fabrication. Their KPI isn't IRR, it's unit tiers of affordability at defined quality. Everything changes when you add land banking. Authorize cities and states to assemble and hold land near transit and job centers. Create a statewide land bank that can buy in down cycles, take tax-delinquent parcels, and swap with agencies to concentrate buildable sites. Use long ground leases to keep control and purpose. Publish a public site registry with zoning, utilities, and soil data so teams can underwrite quickly. Bundle sites for phased delivery. 500 units a year on Corridor A, 700 on Corridor B, so manufacturers and subcontractors can gear up with confidence. To keep projects moving and tenants stable, align protections with production. Pair rent stabilization that covers large corporate owners with safe harbors for new cost-rent stock. Ban junk fees and require transparent, all-in pricing. Streamline eviction for non-payment only after good faith repayment plans, while funding right to counsel to cut preventable displacement. Set clear habitability enforcement with real penalties. The goal isn't to freeze the market, it's to tame the worst extraction while the permanent stock ramps. Let me show you how these levers interlock. Preemption opens the map. Land bank seed sites where you actually want people to live, near buses and rail, not in floodplains far from jobs. Permanent revenue funds a public developer that builds to cost, not comps, with standardized designs that city staff can approve in weeks, not years. Tenant protections stop the bottom from falling out while supply climbs. In 3 to 5 years, you're not praying for filtering. You're delivering thousands of units at reference rents that start below market and stay there. You might be thinking, want lenders bulk, not if you write the rules. Let state housing agencies provide credit enhancement or standby takeout for cost rent projects, backed by that dedicated revenue. Encourage Fannie and Freddie to pilot underwriting for limited profit portfolios using cost rent valuations and long ground leases. Allow pension funds to commit patient capital at modest, fixed yields, matching liabilities while earning a social dividend. When capital knows the rules are stable, it prices the risk and shows up. Quick micro story. Year 1, a state creates the housing utility, dedicates a 0.2% deed transfer surcharge to its fund, and preempts exclusion around transit. Year 2, the land bank assembles 10 sites, pattern books are adopted, procurement secures modular suppliers and union labor. Year 3, 1,800 cost rent units open across 5 corridors with on-site childcare and clinics. By right approvals bring another 3,000 private units online. Renewal hikes flatten because the reference rent exists. Employers stop losing staff to 2-hour commutes. School enrollment stabilizes because families aren't chasing cheaper leases every spring. The real secret is momentum. Each completed building is proof, not promise. Residents become the coalition. Contractors become the lobby for steady volume. Cities see lower shelter costs and fewer ER bills. Bond desks see predictable cash flows. That's how you shift from never to normal. The wealth bomb, why politicians want push the button. Now this is important because everything we've proposed brushes up against the single most sensitive wire in American politics, home equity. For most households, the house isn't just shelter, it's the savings account, the college fund, the safety net. Flatten appreciation and you're not tweaking a market, you're touching the middle class balance sheet. Here's what actually happens when prices cool by design. Households that plan to refinance for tuition or medical bills see less tappable equity. Retirement timelines shift because downsizing yields less than expected. The media frames this as wealth wiped out, even if it's simply slower growth. That framing creates instant political pain. Incumbents read the room and back away. Banks and bond desks feel it too. Mortgages get made on the assumption that collateral values will hold or rise modestly. MBS pricing bakes in prepayment speeds and default probabilities tied to those assumptions. Signal a regime where appreciation is structurally muted across major metros and models change. Lenders widen spreads or raise down payment requirements. Credit tightens at the margin, not because anyone hates affordability, but because risk models need new guardrails. That ripples through every closing table. Local budgets sit on the same fault line. Property tax-dependent cities and school districts plan against assessed value growth. If a jurisdiction delivers thousands of cost rent units near transit and they successfully cool nearby comps, assessors notice. Even flat assessments can upset bond coverage ratios and multi-year financial plans. City managers brief councils, school boards brace. Suddenly, a plan to stabilize rents sounds like a threat to teacher salaries and firefighting equipment. The safer political path is to defend high values and talk about vouchers. Now you might be thinking, but wouldn't people welcome lower housing costs? Renters would. Owners are split. A young owner with minimal equity and a long horizon shrugs at slower gains. A late career owner who is counting on a certain sale price to fund retirement does not. Homeowners vote at higher rates and donate more reliably. That asymmetry shapes policy. Renters churn. Owners stick around to remember who hurt property values. Add the donor class, developers, brokerages, homebuilders, private equity funds rolling up value-add multifamily. Scarcity inflates their returns. They fund campaigns across parties. They're a pragmatic, thale-back upzoning that expands yield and fight rent regulation that caps it. A Vienna-scale social housing program sets a reference price that blunts rent growth and appreciation. To them, it looks like the government manufacturing a competitor with patient capital. Expect quiet, coordinated resistance, white papers warning of investment flight, ballot measures that weaponize process, and advocacy for means-tested vouchers only. There's a micro-story that illustrates the bind. The governor floats a package, statewide preemption near transit, a dedicated housing fund from a deed transfer surcharge, and a new public developer. Polling shows renters love it, suburban homeowners are anxious. Banks request meetings to discuss collateral impacts. School superintendents ask for hold harmless provisions. The governor's advisors trim the plan, narrower preemption, a sunset on the tax pilot scale for the developer. The coalition that could have changed the map becomes a pilot that can't change the math. Everything changes when you appreciate how intertwined housing and retirement have become. We never built a robust, portable, low-fee wealth vehicle for the median household. We told people to buy a house, pay the mortgage, and let inflation do the work. Results followed. Owners saw gains that outpaced wage growth. Renters watched the ladder pull up. Any policy that intentionally cools appreciation must offer a different wealth story. boosted retirement contributions, baby bonds, tax-favored savings, or wage growth that isn't swallowed by rent. Without that, the politics remain brutal. Banks aren't villains here, they're running a playbook we wrote. Collateral drives credit. If policymakers want to change the script, they can. Encourage Fannie and Freddie to recognize cost-rent ground leases as stable collateral. Create state credit enhancements for social housing bonds. Update appraisal guidance to value income stability, not just comps. But those are technical lifts that require federal and state coordination, the opposite of our fragmented OS. Local governments need cushions too. If the state wants districts to accept slower assessment growth around large social housing sites, it can backfill with formula aid. Tie school funding more to student counts and less to neighborhood wealth. Offer fiscal stabilization grants to cities that deliver minimum thresholds of cost-rent units near jobs and transit. Buy down the fear that budget math will break if prices stop climbing. Politically, the coalition has to be built on benefits people can feel fast. That means opening buildings quickly with rents 20–40% below market, placing childcare and clinics on the ground floor, and publicizing waitlist numbers falling. Show the small business owner who kept staff because commutes shrank. Show the ER visits that dropped with housing stability. Make it obvious that slower appreciation isn't poverty, it's breathing room. But here's the hard truth. Many politicians want push the button first. They'll wait for cover. Another state proving the model, business groups that flip once recruitment improves, or bond markets that price social housing debt like a utility. Until then, proposals will get shaved and sequenced into oblivion. So the wealth bomb isn't a mystery. It's a choice we made to anchor middle-class security to rising house prices and bank balance sheets to that same trend. If we want Vienna's stability, we have to diffuse it on purpose, by building a different savings story, cushioning local budgets, modernizing credit standards, and delivering visible wins fast enough to survive the first election cycle. Edge cases where America is quietly testing pieces. Let's talk about the cracks where light is getting in, places quietly stitching together parts of the Vienna playbook without saying the word Vienna. None of these are the full model. Together, they show what's possible, what breaks, and where the backlash forms. Start with Montgomery County, Maryland. Decades of inclusionary zoning, its moderately priced dwelling unit program, forced mixed-income outcomes inside market projects. The county also leaned on a housing fund to acquire and preserve units. It isn't cost-rent in the Viennese sense, but the operating idea is familiar. Permanent affordability embedded in normal neighborhoods, not isolated projects. The lesson is durability. When affordability is a standing rule, developers price it in and production continues. Seattle and Minneapolis offer a different thread, zoning reform with teeth. Minneapolis ended single-family-only zoning citywide, and while production ramped unevenly, missing middle types began reappearing. Seattle's upzones around transit produced new supply where approvals were clearer. The takeaway isn't that reform alone solves it. It's that by right pathways can actually overcome the Tuesday night veto we talked about. But you still need the public builder to set stable reference rents. California is the preemption laboratory. ADUs went from novelty to mainstream after the state stripped local discretion. Legislation like SB 1069, OB 68, and OB 881 turned backyard units into a by right entitlement. SB 9 opened lot splits and 2 units on many single-family parcels, while SB 35 created objective, streamlined approvals for projects that meet affordability targets in cities missing their housing goals. Production rose where rules became clear. The limit, ADUs and small infill help, but they don't create large, permanent below-market portfolios without a public owner. Oregon's HB 2001 did the statewide version of missing middle legalization, and early data shows small builders re-enter when standards are simple and subjective review is minimal. That's the open the map lever. Yet even in Oregon, you feel the absence of a public land bank and a cost-rent developer to grab key sites near transit, standardized designs, and hold for the long term. Public land pilots are where the Vienna vibe gets real. Cities from Austin to Denver to San Francisco have started mapping surplus parcels, old bus yards, underused parking lots, agency remnant sites, and dedicating them to affordable housing. When those sites are leased under long ground leases to mission-driven or limited-profit developers, land cost stops killing the pro forma. The constraint is scale and stamina. One-off RFPs with bespoke designs move slowly and invite the old discretionary traps unless pattern books and by right standards are in place. Community land trusts are another piece, decommodifying land to stabilize prices for owners or renters. They're a small, local, and resilient. A CLT can hold land under limited equity homes or mixed-income rentals, keeping resale formulas or cost-rent principles intact. The challenge is capital. Without dedicated revenue and land assembly, growth is linear when the need is exponential. Social housing ballots are a new frontier. Seattle's social housing initiative aims to seed a public developer with a charter closer to limited-profit European models. In California, statewide efforts to create public developers and finance them have surfaced, stalled, and resurfaced. The pattern is predictable: early enthusiasm, strong renter support, organized homeowner resistance, and donor-class skepticism. Pilots pass, system change gets shaved into study commissions. Look abroad for scale lessons adapted to local politics. Singapore's HDB shows what a vertically integrated public developer can do: land assembly, standard designs, predictable delivery, long leases, and an internal financing arm. Helsinki demonstrates how cost rent and mixed tenure districts can normalize public units alongside private ones. U.S. reformers draw from both: the standardization and pipeline discipline, the mixed income allocation, and the transit-first siting. There are early results worth noticing. After California's ADU preemption, permits exploded and costs per unit undercut mid-rise construction, giving cities quick, distributed wins. Minneapolis saw small multifamily reappear on lots where it had been illegal for decades. Some public land projects, like Denver's DHA redevelopments, show you can thread mixed income without displacing original residents when the public entity controls phasing and tenure. And the limits are consistent. Lawsuits target process shortcuts. Historic overlays expand to encircle high-opportunity parcels. Funding cycles create feast-famine project pipelines. Election turnover swaps champions for caretakers. Even where production rises, rent stabilization or tenant protections lag, and displacement pressure sneaks in on adjacent blocks. Here's the quiet lesson tying these edge cases together. When reforms reduce discretion, small builders return. When land is public, costs drop and purpose holds. When revenue is dedicated, pipelines stabilize. When design is standardized, approvals compress. When tenants have a seat at the table, assets don't decay. You need all five to move from pilot to platform. We're not there yet, but every ADU that rents below new build prices, every public parcel that becomes a mixed-income courtyard near a bus line, every CLT home that doesn't vanish at resale, these are proof points. They want melt the wealth machine on their own. They do tell us the machine isn't invincible if the right institutions show up, with the right rules, and stay long enough to matter. The moral math: what refusal actually costs us. Let's put numbers to the gut feeling everyone has. Refusing structural fixes is not free. We pay every day in ways budgets hide and headlines skip. When we say no to permanent affordability, we say yes to bigger bills somewhere else. Start with homelessness. Cities spend heavily on emergency responses, ER visits, police time, jail bookings, shelters, because unsheltered people have nowhere stable to recover, store meds, or sleep. Housing First pilots keep showing the same thing. The all-in emergency tab often exceeds the annual cost of an apartment plus supportive services. Stabilize someone's housing and crises drop, keep them outside, and the meter never stops. We call it compassion when it's also fiscal sense. Public health tracks the same pattern. Unstable housing drives asthma flares, unmanaged diabetes, mental health crises, and infant health complications. Hospitals eat unreimbursed costs, insurers raise premiums, and employers lose productivity to sick days. A cost rent unit with basic insulation and predictable tenure does more for a family's health profile than a dozen clinic flyers. When your address changes every 6 months, your care plan doesn't stand a chance. Now think time. Long commutes are a tax paid in hours, not dollars, and it's colossal. When zoning locks people far from jobs, families burn evenings in traffic instead of homework, side gigs, or sleep. Employers see churn because workers can't make schedules work. Transit agencies struggle to serve sprawl efficiently. A modest 2-bedroom near a bus line returns time to households like a raise. You can't deposit an hour, but you can feel it. Education costs compound. Housing instability yanks students between schools, tanks attendance, and derails learning. Districts then spend on remediation, transportation, and social work to triage what a stable lease would have prevented. Teachers become case managers. Principals become housing navigators. Keep families anchored and test scores rise, not because pedagogy suddenly improved, but because stress receded and continuity returned. Family formation takes a hit too. When rents chew half a paycheck and leases feel fragile, couples delay marriage, kids, or caregiving plans. Grandparents live counties away because that's where rent is tolerable. The support network that makes middle-class life possible, free childcare, shared cars, an extra bed in a pinch, stretches thin until it snaps. We call it lifestyle choice. It's a math problem with rent at the top of the equation. Let's talk climate, because land use is climate policy in disguise. Low-density zoning near jobs forces car trips. Vehicle miles traveled soar, and tailpipes do the rest. Cities scramble to meet emissions targets with electric buses and building codes while blocking the mid-rise housing that would cut driving miles in half. Underground parking you mandated last year embeds concrete emissions y'all fight for decades. Put homes near rail and frequent buses, and you cut fuel burned, roads widened, and storms drains expanded. It's cheaper to move people less than to clean up after moving them more. Infrastructure and municipal finance don't escape. Sprawl hardwires long pipes, wires, and roads that require forever maintenance. Each cul-de-sac is a promise to plow, patch, and patrol. With too few households per mile, the tax base struggles to keep up. Then officials defend high valuations to backfill the gap, which feeds the political defense of scarcity. Build compact, and the same dollars serve more people better. Refuse density, and you finance entropy. Segregation's price tag is subtle and steep. When high-opportunity neighborhoods remain expensive by design, talent gets sorted by birth lottery. Kids travel farther for weaker schools. Adults travel farther for worse jobs. The economy loses matches, nurse to hospital, coder to startup, teacher to classroom, that never happen because rent blocks the move. GDP doesn't print the missing output. You feel it as slower growth and thinner civic glue. Intergenerational wealth splits widen. Owners ride appreciation, renters ride volatility. School access and safety track property values so mobility calcifies. We then spend on scholarships, philanthropy, and opportunity programs to patch holes created by exclusion. A broad cost-rent base narrows the gap by lowering the floor families must clear to save, study, and start businesses. It's not redistribution, it's friction reduction. Small businesses pay too. High commercial rents follow residential heat. Staff turn over because commutes break them. Delivery costs rise because routes stretch. A cafe on a cost-rent ground floor with steady tenants upstairs has predictable foot traffic and a landlord without a quarterly NOI target. That stability is worth more than a grant cycle. Policing absorbs the spillovers of precarity. Noise complaints rise with overcrowding. Petty crime climbs with desperation. Officers become first responders to economic stress, not criminal intent. Give neighborhoods stable rents, daylighted courtyards, and tenant councils with real power, and calls drop. Its design is prevention, not punishment. You might be thinking, this sounds like big spending. It's bigger saving. The choice isn't between paying for social housing or paying nothing. It's between paying for permanence or paying forever for emergencies, emissions, churn, and decay. One tab declines as the stock grows. The other compounds interest you can't refinance. Here's the simplest moral math I can offer. Every month we keep rents untethered to costs. We buy a little more despair and a lot more inefficiency. Every building we add to a permanent, mixed-income, cost-rent portfolio buys calmer schools, healthier families, cleaner air, steadier small businesses, and budgets that don't need crisis line items quite as often. If we want change the system, we own its outcomes, and the bill arrives whether we open it or not. Objections, myths, and the quick answers. Public housing always fails. It fails when funding is episodic, maintenance is deferred, and tenants have no voice. Vienna runs on permanent revenue, cost rent, and tenant councils. Quality is a governance choice, not a miracle. We just need deregulation. Upsigning helps, but crises run on 5-year clocks while filtering runs on decades. Pair by right approvals with a public builder setting a stable reference rent now. It's too expensive. We already pay more through ER visits, policing, commute time, and emissions. Permanent units redirect that spend into assets that lower costs every year. Developers will never go for it. Limited profit models exist. Capped returns, standardized designs, and de-risk approvals. Pension capital will take steady yields over speculative IRR. Property rights zoning already social engineers scarcity. State preemption simply resets defaults to allow homes near jobs and transit. Banks want finance it. Offer credit enhancements, dedicated revenue, and updated appraisal guidance that values cost-rent stability, and the capital stack shows up. People will game eligibility. Broad bans, audits, and periodic checks minimize abuse without punishing success. The politics are impossible. Deliver visible wins fast, open buildings with childcare and clinics at 20–40% below market, and coalitions harden around results. Housing is a wealth choice. Keep anchoring security to rising prices or build a permanent cost-rent floor that stabilizes life. If this hit a nerve because you've felt the renewal email dread or lost staff to 2-hour commutes, share this now. And if you want the step-by-step playbook, funding streams, model legislation, pattern books, and how to launch a public developer in your state, subscribe and watch the follow-up guide I'm dropping next. It breaks down the templates you can take to your city tomorrow and the first 3 moves to make in the next 30 days.